Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elevated, the Caltech Center for Technology and Management Education's podcast exploring the intersection of technology, project management, and leadership. Today, we are very lucky because we have Dr. Tina Srivastava in person, who is an MIT-trained rocket scientist, entrepreneur, and inventor with more than 30 patents. As co-founder of Badge, she's redefining digital privacy through her pioneering concept of identity without secrets. Dr. Tina's remarkable career spans leading multi-million-dollar defense programs at Raytheon, founding and selling a cybersecurity startup, and teaching aeronautics and astronautics at MIT, where her lectures have reached millions, including me. In fact, I highly recommend her lecture on airplane aerodynamics that has been viewed on YouTube nearly 6 million times. She's also an author and systems engineering leader, helping bridge the worlds of program management and technical innovation. I'm so excited about our interview today. Let's go. Dr. Tina, it is a pleasure to be here with you in your office in Redwood City. Thank you so much for having us here. There's so many questions that we have for you. I know that we have limited time, so I'm just going to make sure that I ask all of them because I know that our audience has a number of questions that they would want me to ask. So we're going to start with your origin story. How did you, are you exactly where you thought you'd be? Is this what you dreamt of? Tell us how you imagined yourself as a young woman, as a young girl, young woman, and tell us about the trajectory of your life. It's fascinating.
Thank you so much, Jen. And it's just such a pleasure to be here. And I'm so glad that we were able to do this in person. And yeah, happy to share. I think that I was one of those kids who, when I was little, would always look up when an airplane went by. And I've been fascinated with flying and aerospace since then. And I am today a pilot and an aerospace engineer. So that's actually what got me here, is pursuing that passion. And after MIT and studying aerospace engineering, I went on to do aerospace engineering at Raytheon. So I worked as a chief engineer, leading systems engineering. I also had some PM hats that I wore, and that'll, of course, get into our discussion today about PMs and SEs. And then I noticed some cybersecurity vulnerabilities and how we transferred waveforms to our sensor systems. So I founded a previous cybersecurity startup to solve that problem. It was a great experience. We built the company from scratch, sold it to a public company in network assurance. And along the way, we had our security clearances, which meant that my fingerprints, these fingerprints, were stored in the Office of Personnel Management, OPM database, which was breached. And so this was an eye-opening moment that, how do I prove that I'm Tina without giving up everything I use to prove who I am? And that's what led me to Badge and Identity Without Secrets, proving you are you on the internet so that no one else can be you and only you can prove it's you. And that's what I'm focused on today. And I'm also very passionate about program management and systems engineering and how the two disciplines work together to tackle some of our most important problems and challenges, especially in the age of AI and increasing threats.
And there are a number of exciting developments that have happened with Badge that we'll get to, definitely. Before we do that, I want to have you talk a little bit about the leadership skills that led you to notice the vulnerability. So obviously, it's kind of easy to notice issues and cracks in whatever company we work for, but how did you take the initiative to decide that you wanted to be a solution? For young people and developing PMs, developing SEs who are system engineers who are growing you were always growing in our leadership skills. Tell us about how you honed that ability and how others can learn that type of leadership skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the emphasis, of course, on how we grow. Well, Luckily, Raytheon is a very supportive and encouraging company. I had the pleasure to work with leaders that were really trying to solve the problems that the warfighters were facing. And we always were pushing the limits on what technology can do, how we can improve, how we can enhance it, how we can make the lives of our warfighters better, safer, more protected. And so there was a culture around innovation. And I had the privilege of going through the process of inventing things, going through the invention submission process. I know we were just chatting about that. And what does it mean to have a patent? What does it mean to have a trade secret? And how to put inventions forward? And then really what pushes the envelope. So that is the process I followed. And that's really what led me to innovation and patents even today.
And what were two of the key leadership or management skills that those who were managing you at the time, that they create? How did they create that culture, or not did they, but how did they create that culture around you? And how would you give managers, what advice would you give to managers who want to have that same culture of innovation, which is so important?
Yes, you're right, Jen. It is very important. And it is hard to foster that culture because you're often in a situation where there are tight deadlines, there's limited resources, and it's really important that we have to deliver what we're delivering. And so a lot of that innovation kind of is left to the side, right? And so one of the ways that to really encourage that is just focus on what is the problem? What is the problem we're trying to solve? And one of the things that MIT really focuses on as well is what's a solution neutral problem statement? So how can we really understand what the problem is without presupposing the solution? And that leaves open the opportunity for innovation. One more thing I would add, which we were also talking about, what can managers do? There actually are some very specific programs and processes that we can put into place, like having a deputy program where people can shadow a leader in a field. And so even before a person fully has the skill set to, for instance, be the chief systems engineer, being able to shadow or be in a deputy role can really help encourage that leadership growth and really learn what it takes to work in these roles. And similar programs that we had were chief engineer, tech director, pipeline, where again, we really encourage the hands-on experience because there's only so much you can teach versus actually doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great advice, actually. In fact, you were earlier, we were talking about ways to ensure that there's innovation is successful and that project management, program management in general is successful. And you mentioned the deputy suggestion, the shadowing suggestion. Could you tell us a bit more about the rotation suggestion that you had told me about?
Yeah, I think this is very critical. And in the research that we've done at INCOSE, the International Council on Systems Engineering, in collaboration with PMI, the Project Management Institute, we looked at what do program managers and systems engineers have to collaborate on to achieve a successful program outcome. And what we found is that every important technical project really has this intersection where PMs play some of the roles, the lead chief engineer plays other roles, and oftentimes there's an overlap, whether that's in external supplier relations or life cycle management. There are all these places where really both PMs and SEs play a role. And so how can PMs and SEs better understand their counterpart? What are they facing? What are the challenges? And without that depth of understanding, we find that there's more tension in programs that actually leads to tangible impact, project overruns, budget overruns, even project cancellations. And so this notion of rotation programs actually is quite effective. So in studying specific projects where there's a more often, on-time delivery, stakeholders reporting that they got what they asked for. We found that the program managers and systems engineers followed a couple best practices. And one of those is that PMs can actually do a rotation in a systems engineering domain. Now, if they don't have the requisite experience to take on that full role, the rotation can be as a deputy. So, for instance, a PM that is not served as a systems engineer can serve as a deputy systems engineer and really walk in the shoes of that systems engineer. And exactly the same on the other side. So, if you've been the technical leader, and that maybe is where your expertise is, one way to grow and broaden your skills is actually to do a rotation as the PM. Focus on the cost, the schedule, working with the customer, and understanding the pressures in that role will actually help you be a better systems engineer.
So when you hear pushback of, but that's going to take too much time, we don't have the bandwidth for that, how do you convince others to adopt this wonderful advice?
Yes, in fact, all of these things require, first of all, a recognition by the organization that there is a need for program managers and systems engineers to better collaborate. We now have more and more research coming out of MIT and COSI and PMI showing how tangible this is, how important the PM and SE collaboration is to the success of projects. And some things, that might be less ambitious than a full rotation program are hiring PMs that have a little bit more technical expertise, hiring SEs that have a little bit of PM experience, letting them take classes in each other's domain. And also, this might sound very simple, Jen, but writing down the job description in a place that not only your organization, but also your customer can see that here are the duties and responsibilities of the PM, here are the duties and responsibilities of the SE, actually has a tangible impact. And we're talking about everything from massive propulsion systems, aerospace systems, to even smaller scale projects. That relationship and that dynamic is really critical.
Absolutely. I hope everyone's listening listening to this. It's wonderful advice. So I want to hear more about. First of all, you are one of the editors of this fantastic book, Integrating Program Management and Systems Engineering. So tell us a bit about the process of creating this and what you learned as best practices beyond the rotation and the deputy advice that you've given us.
Yeah, so this was actually a multi-year effort that came out of a collaboration between the Project Management Institute and INCOSI, the International Council on Systems Engineering. And the two organizations, both, global nonprofits that are really focused on advancing knowledge, really saw that this was a gap, that PMs and SEs needed more tools on how they can collaborate, how they can more effectively work together. And so the research conducted involved talking to people at all kinds of projects of different scales, from massive construction projects to aerospace projects to everything in between, and really documenting what are the challenges faced, how those can be overcome, and what are the characteristics of a well-integrated system where the PMs and the SEs collaborate well. And that research really is the basis behind this book. And since then, we've actually expanded the collaboration with the organizations working together. We have an open working group where PMs and SEs collaborate, and we focus on some of the latest topics like tools that we can use for PMs and SEs, such as AI-powered tools, how AI can help generate and make more efficient program management plans, SEMPs, leveraging the right techniques, and also what are the pitfalls in using such technologies. We also focus on design structure matrices, or DSMs, which are a tool that can really highlight the intersections, whether you're talking about a specific system and which parts interact with each other, or actually an organization and which teams really need to collaborate with each other, and what those hot button points are where maybe allocating additional time for collaboration will save a lot of heartache at the end.
Thank you. I'm thinking back to imagining you as a beautiful young woman, young girl, looking up at the sky and seeing those airplanes. You obviously are naturally curious, and you have natural leadership skills. What skills did you have to develop within yourself that didn't come naturally, and what prompted those situations for you?
I think one of the most important was how to explain complex technical topics in a simple way and forcing yourself to explain it, re explain it. One, it helps you better understand it yourself. But the other is it's really critical in communicating with your team. Sometimes we get really into the weeds. Okay, we're in this particular circuit card assembly and there's a heat transfer, and we need to do additional validation and verification in a particular chamber, and it can get very into the technical weeds. Then it's important to hone your skill on how can I communicate the importance of this, why this is important, why this is relevant, why this will make a difference. And that will really help when working on, customer stakeholder requirements, discussing really what the impact is to schedule, what the payoff is for investing in a particular area. That, I think, is a very important skill to hone.
And I will say that you are so great at that. In watching the aerodynamics lecture on YouTube, 6 million views. The way you explain things so simply and so beautifully is really great. And that is a true educator to be able to do that. What I want to ask, what I want to add to that is that, one of the benefits of having these AI tools to leverage for the life cycle of our various projects is to be able to use the voice mode of these tools and practice explaining to various stakeholders about whatever the subject matter is. And then and get feedback and a different perspective without the necessity of being vulnerable in front of another human to start, and practicing on an AI tool rather. So that is a really great use of honing that skill of explaining, because when you can explain well, you develop trust, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great example of how these AI tools can really help us in ways we maybe didn't imagine initially. Getting feedback, generating questions that then you have to think of what are the answers to these questions, I think really keeps you on your toes. This morning, I was teaching a class on technology road mapping, and we really engage the students at MIT in asking, what are the hard questions? How is technology going to change? And we were talking about the evolution of aircraft and what are the changing requirements going to be for aircraft in the future. And really, there was a kind of a funny discussion, if you will, on the metaverse. Is that going to impact the needs for air travel? Is it going to significantly disrupt it, or is it going to be additive? And so these are the types of things that you can now practice and get this feedback working with AI. But of course, you have to overlay the privacy needs there as well, which is what we were chatting about as well. When you're working in these systems, oftentimes you're working on proprietary things. And so you have to be careful that whatever you communicate to the AI, what are the privacy settings? Where is that data being used? Where might it be training? So that you know that your data is following appropriate policies.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, on-prem is the way to go when we're dealing with those type of scenarios.
Yes, absolutely. And I think more and more we need to ask those questions about these tools that are increasingly useful, increasingly helpful, and finding out, why is this tool free for me to use? And is it because I'm the product that's being monetized? So definitely more and more we need to ask those questions. And I think because we have been asking those questions, we're starting to get better answers.
Moving on to your book, I would love for you to tell us about Innovating in a Secret World. We will have the link to this in our YouTube channel. Tell us about why you decided to write this and what the book is about.
Yes, this is based on my research at MIT, having worked in national security spaces. And we are often working on the most advanced, cutting edge technology. But when you look around how we're innovating, oftentimes we're hamstrung with the tools that we have around us. I mean, we're talking here about AI, forget it. I mean, we're just talking about having reasonable internet and computers, and it's so much of a contrast, right? Because you're working on things that are cutting edge, they're the most advanced technologies in the world, but the ways that we go about innovating are very restricted for real reasons, such as national security, security classification, secrecy, and intellectual property, and protecting that IP and the innovations for keeping a competitive edge, for instance. And so, what I dive into is really challenging the tension and seeing whether, in fact, you can bring open innovation, the latest innovation, into these restricted worlds, whether it's security classification or IP protection. And in fact, there are a lot more opportunities than may seem visible with the naked eye. There are a lot of places where secrecy may actually be inhibiting national security rather than promoting it. And I explore certain areas where you can, in fact, advance national security interests by enabling innovation in technology that serves a greater interest, even though it may not be necessarily following the strictest restrictions that we tend to put in by default when working in these environments. So again, really rechecking what is necessary. I go through specific intellectual property policies, contrasting some government programs that have used national security interests, but also trying to bring in ideas from the outside world. And then even in the private sector, looking at pharmaceutical industry, again, very cloaked in secrecy for sure, but also they have found a way to break through. I give the example of Roche and talk about some of the challenges they faced in innovating around a device that takes in a particular sample for analysis, and it was very critical that this sample is the right dimensions and size, and knowing that really affects the outcome of the analysis, and how they're able to leverage the latest innovation methods by thinking critically about intellectual property, incentive structures to get the right innovation to advance technology.
That leads me to Badge. I want to know about the transition from Raytheon to the cybersecurity to Badge. Tell us about that journey and any challenges that you didn't expect during that time.
Sure. I mean, it was a time that was very well supported by MIT, as I mentioned. There are a lot of resources in the community that support entrepreneurship, that support startups. My previous company, we had a lot of MIT professors that were our advisors. We had a lot of MIT investors. And in fact, we've been so fortunate at Badge that all of our investors from our previous company are also investors in Badge. And that vote of confidence has certainly been a big boost. And really, one of the things that has been a consistent thread in my work across Raytheon, my previous company, and at Badge has been just being very passionate about the problem we're seeking to solve. Of course, at Badge, it's very personal to me. My biometric data was compromised, and I really feel motivated by this mission of making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. And we're also really motivated with all of the places I've been on technical integrity, really focusing on making sure we get it right, even if it takes longer, even if it takes additional diligence. If we can make sure that every statement we make is 100% accurate, we confirm that before we go out and tell the world anything.
And there's been some really exciting developments with Badge. Tell us about those exciting developments and how Badge is affecting the financial sector and healthcare, and why it's so important for both areas.
Absolutely, Jen. Those are areas where it really matters that you can prove you are you. It's the, financial and healthcare are places where you have personal data, where fraud can be very devastating, and where it's so absolutely critical that you protect your information and that every transaction you make, you're confirmed that you are you, you're the one making the transaction. And yes, we're very excited about our recent work. We just came out of stealth mode last year, and we have grown in the partners that have approached Badge and that we've announced partnerships. And so very recently, we've expanded our partnership with Thales, the global public company that's really focused on identity verification. And they have integrated Badge to ensure that a comprehensive identity life cycle is met so that once you prove you are you, you can now seamlessly prove you are you on any device, anywhere, whether for financial transactions, for banks, whether you change devices, which tends to be a very high friction point and also something that's exploited by criminals. And with the ever increasing AI and phishing attacks, being able to prove that you are you in a phishing resistant way is critical. And in the healthcare space, we've grown our partnership with CyberArk, who's of course been in the news with the recent $20 billion Palo Alto acquisition. And CyberArk is really tackling healthcare in a unique way, really focused on the privileged access side, clinicians, nurses, doctors, and even on the patient side. And what we found is that together with Badge, we can eliminate stored secrets and ensure that you can prove you are you to get access to your data, to your records instantly, right when you need it, because it's ever so critical in a healthcare setting where every second counts.
Congratulations, well deserved, and I'm so excited to see. I mean, sky's the limit because I can think of off the top of my head 100 different areas that Badge could be useful. So thank you for creating that important innovation, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. What I want to know is, as I mentioned before when we were chatting, there's a lot of angst right now, as you know, with all the developments that are emerging right now in not only AI but the numerous areas surrounding AI and cyber and crypto, all the different areas. So there's a lot of insecurity and a lot of concern about how to approach growth and upskilling and where to go. What advice would you give to PMs who are filling that, and to anybody else who's looking to transition or pivot or expand in their careers? What advice do you have? Because you've obviously had a lot of experience with different industries and growth and merging two industries. So tell us about that.
Yes, in fact, this is a topic of research that Nkosi is focused on right now in our working group, and how AI can help PMs and SEs, both in terms of better collaboration. We talked about tools like DSMs that help identify points of integration. Well, that's actually something that AI can really help with today and help accelerate the identification of these trigger points, so bringing forward the materials you need to address them in a rapid way. But at the end of the day, it really still requires that same experience, because a critical eye needs to check that, is this correct? One of the challenges with AI is also how confident it seems in putting forward what it is saying. And so being able to, just as you would challenge another person on the team or another contributor to the work, you have to challenge, what are the assumptions in here? Where did this come from? Is this valid? Does this make sense? And it cannot replace the communication that continues to need to occur between PMs and SEs. And we often think about, an iron triangle, if you will, with the sides of the triangle being the cost, the schedule, and the technical performance. And you can't really make a change on one side without affecting the others. And that remains true. And so it's very difficult to divvy up the work that, okay, the PMs do the cost and schedule and the chief engineer does the technical side, because to reduce risk in one dimension really impacts the others. It could actually have, an increased schedule or cost in order to decrease technical risk through additional testing, for instance. And so these conversations continue to need to occur. But what we're doing in our open working group with PMs and SEs are looking at how AI can help with the SEMP, with the PMP, with these points of collaboration, with identifying things that are coming up down the road, looking at the external supplier relations and, of course, life cycle implications of the decisions that are being made, with, of course, the benefit of training off of the previous successes that we've had. And so this is currently an active area of research. And so the advice I would give to folks that are feeling the angst, as you shared, is that I don't think we have the answers yet. These are just tools. There isn't one go-to tool that you must know. And once you know it, I'm sure it's not going to be the top tool. So rather than take that as oh my goodness, this is so overwhelming, I think take it with stride that there's always going to be evolving tools, and there always have been. Since we started with this, there's a movement around model-based systems engineering, which AI can actually help make a lot easier. And so there, along with a mountain of new things to learn, there's also some advancements that help make it easier, and you always have some AI to chat with to double check what you're doing. And so that resource is there, as well as the community that we're building, and Jen, that you're building with Elevated and with the work that Caltech is doing.
Thank you. And I'm doing my my due diligence in that I'm about to start our systems engineering fundamentals course, and that's a part of a three-part series, and to continually and then I'll be hitting up your book after that to merge the PM and SE together. What would you like to tell project managers for just future advice for them? What would you like to add to what you've already said?
I think for PMs, the reality is that our world is driven by technology and technology innovation. So it is critical, absolutely critical, to make sure that not only do you dip your toe in that, but you immerse yourself into it. So whether it's through asking, hey, is there a deputy role? Can I shadow a systems engineer or the chief engineer? Can I do a rotation where I just learn what are the trade-offs and how are those decisions made? Because that will be critical as a PM, even continuing in the career trajectory of being a PM, learning exactly what the chief engineer needs to decide in making these decisions is critical. So I would certainly throw that onto the pile of something to do, which is exactly what you're doing, Jen. So glad you're taking the course.
And that leads to better communication of all the elements to stakeholders. So we want to know what's in the future for you. What's happening? Tell us, give us, a little bit of insight into future Dr. Tina and what we can look forward to next with you.
Absolutely. Well, for one, I'm really focused on this mission at Badge on delivering privacy to the world. Being able to prove who you are is something that should have been there from the start of the internet, and we're really restoring that so that you can prove you are you anywhere in a seamless, easy way that doesn't put the burden on the user and that doesn't give up your privacy and your data. And so that's what we're really focused on, is the future of the internet, the future of proving you are who you are in a seamless way on any device wherever you go. And I think that still, in my mind, dovetails into innovation, into these areas that I'm really passionate about. And I will always also be up in the sky in an airplane. And so you can look up and wave as I fly by.
Fantastic. And you were mentioning there are some events that are happening in San Francisco in December. And so we'll link that up into the YouTube video here. And I love what you said. What Badge is doing is something that you're right, should have always been a part of it. And that's when you know something is not only special, but it was meant to be. And so thank you for all your work in that. It's very important. Thank you, Dr. Tina. I'm just I was trying very hard not to fangirl around you. And I so admire your work, and I'm excited to continue to just applaud you and cheer you on as you continue to develop. And I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Thanks so much, Jen. It's an honor to be here with you. And I think that the topics that we're discussing, that you're bringing to light with your viewers, are just absolutely critical. In the age of AI, what does that mean for identity? What does that mean for tools and resources? What does that mean whether you're an educator or whether you're using these tools as a program manager? And I think that bringing these to the forefront is absolutely critical. The time is now for that. And so thank you for doing that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.